I had always loved the mornings in our house. The sun shone softly through the white curtains in the living room, illuminating the antique rug Rodrigo and I had brought back from a trip to Cordoba in the early years of our marriage. Now, as I prepared for my trip to Buenos Aires, I lingered on every familiar detail of the interior, as if saying goodbye to them for an indefinite period of time. The suitcase stood half open on the bed. I piled the dresses into it, choosing the prettiest ones to see my children after 4 months of separation. Adelaide was celebrating her 27th birthday, and I wanted to look nice for her. The black dress with the pearl brooch that Rodrigo liked so much, a dark blue suit to see Fabricio, a light beige dress in case my daughter wanted to go out in the afternoon. The ringing of the doorbell interrupted my musings. I knew it was Celeste. She'd promised to come by to walk me to the train station. We'd been friends for over 20 years, ever since our husbands had started a textile factory together. After Celeste's husband died 5 years ago, we became even closer, supporting each other in times of need. "Esther, are you ready?" asked her friend as she entered the bedroom. Celeste had always been a practical woman, a little overweight, with short gray hair and kind brown eyes. Her sewing shop brought in a modest but steady income, and she prided herself on her independence. "Almost," I replied, putting the last of my things in my suitcase. "Celeste, honestly, I'm not too worried, am I? It's just that the kids lately have been so aloof." She sat down on the edge of the bed and looked at me carefully. "Esther, it's been 2 years since Rodrigo died. The children are grown up, they have their own lives in the capital. It's normal that they don't call every day." I shook my head, buttoning my suitcase. "Adelaide used to call me 3 times a week, telling me about work, about Gaspard. Now, Fabricio doesn't pick up the phone at all, only answers messages. And he's not very clear." "Maybe it's just hard for them without their father," Celeste said quietly. "Rodrigo was not only a father to them, but also, how can I put it, a source of security for them." I realized my friend was right. My late husband had indeed surrounded the children with so much care that they had become accustomed to feeling protected from all the troubles of life. Rodrigo had set up a trust fund for Adelaide and Fabricio that provided them with a monthly income of $3,000 each. In addition, he bought them apartments in the prestigious neighborhoods of Buenos Aires. Adelaide in Palermo, Fabricio in Recoleta. True, formalized the real estate in his name, explaining it for tax reasons, and after his death, the apartments went to me. "Remember how Rodrigo used to say, 'Children should live better than we do'?" I said, locking my suitcase. "Sometimes I think he spoiled them too much." Celeste shrugged her shoulders. "What's done is done. The important thing is that the children grew up to be good people. Adelaide works as a manager at that cosmetics company, Fabricio at the bank doing credit counseling. They're independent." We went down to the first floor where Carmen, the elderly housekeeper who had been helping me around the house for 8 years, was waiting for me. Rodrigo had found her through acquaintances when the factory started to bring in a good income, and we decided I needed help around the house. "Senora Esther, I made you some sandwiches for the road," Carmen said, holding out a small bag, "and a thermos of coffee." "Thank you, Carmen. I'll be in Buenos Aires for 5 days. Don't forget to water the flowers in the greenhouse, especially the orchids. And if the factory calls, tell Celeste she knows what to do." The housekeeper nodded. Carmen was a taciturn but reliable woman in her 50s, with heavy hands and her hair always neatly coiled. She lived in a nearby neighborhood with her mechanic husband and 2 teenage sons. "Also, Carmen," I added, "if the handyman comes to fix the air conditioner in the office, have him do it right. The money is in the drawer of the secretary." "All right, Senora, have a good trip." Celeste and I drove to the station in her old car. On the way, her friend talked about her business. She had recently received a large order for uniforms for a local private school, and it allowed her to put some money aside for a vacation. "How are things going at the factory?" Celeste asked, pulling up at a stoplight. "Stable, the manager is doing well, orders are coming in." Rodrigo had organized the production well. Even without him, everything was running like clockwork. It was true. The textile factory my husband founded produced quality fabrics for the furniture industry. We had regular customers in Buenos Aires, Cordoba, and Mendoza. After Rodrigo's death, I didn't change anything drastically. I simply entrusted the day-to-day management to an experienced manager whom my husband had trained for several years. The train station greeted us with the usual bustle. The train to Buenos Aires left at 11 in the morning, and I had another half hour. Celeste helped me carry my suitcase to the car. Esther, she said, hugging me goodbye, try not to worry too much. The kids love you. It's just that they're at an age where it seems like parents don't understand modern life. Thanks for seeing me off. I'll call you when I get there. The train started right on schedule. I sat by the window in the first-class compartment and took out of my purse a photograph that I always took on trips. It was of Rodrigo and me on the terrace of our house 3 years ago, when Adelaide had turned 24. Rodrigo was hugging his daughter, Fabricio was standing next to a cake, and I was smiling at the camera. We didn't know then that my husband would be gone in a year. The heart attack came suddenly during the night. Rodrigo woke up with pain in his chest. I called an ambulance, but the doctors could do nothing. He was 58 years old. He had never complained about his heart, had regular checkups. The children came to the funeral depressed. Adelaide cried for a week. Fabricio withdrew into himself. First time after the funeral, they called every day, came on weekends. But gradually the visits became less frequent and the calls shorter. I understood that it was painful for them to remember their father. The house seemed empty without him. But it was hard for me too, and it was as if they'd forgotten about it. The train swayed and the familiar scenery of the Argentine pampa flashed outside the window. I remembered the first time I had traveled this route more than 30 years ago as a girl to go to university in Buenos Aires. It seemed to me then that my whole life was ahead of me, that I would definitely become a successful lawyer and live in the capital. But in my second year, I met Rodrigo, who had come to the city on business for his then small factory. He was 6 years older than me, serious, purposeful, with kind eyes and strong hands. A year later, we got married, and I moved in with him in the provincial town. Sometimes I wondered if I had made a mistake then, abandoning my studies for the sake of my family. But the years with Rodrigo were happy. We raised our children together, developed our business, traveled. He never reproached me for not becoming a lawyer. On the contrary, he often said that I was his wisest counselor. The children were born 2 years apart, first Adelaide, then Fabricio. Rodrigo loved them, especially his daughter. Adelaide was like me in my youth, dark-haired with lively brown eyes, sociable and a little stubborn. Fabricio inherited his father's calm character and business acumen, but was more reserved. When the children graduated from high school, Rodrigo insisted that they study in the capital. Adelaide entered the Faculty of International Relations. Fabricio chose economics. Her husband rented them an apartment in the center, regularly sent money for living, came to visit every month. After university, they both stayed in Buenos Aires. Adelaide got a job in a cosmetics company, Fabricio in a bank. Rodrigo told me at the time, let them try independent life. If it doesn't work out, they can always come home. But the kids didn't come back. They got used to life in the capital. They had friends, jobs, plans. Rodrigo bought them apartments and set up a trust fund to make them feel more secure. He explained to me, Esther, you and I grew up in a different environment. We had to do everything on our own. Children should have more opportunities. I didn't always agree with this attitude. I thought that too easy a life might spoil Adelaide and Fabricio. But Rodrigo was adamant on this point. He wanted the children to never know want. The guide announced that we would be arriving in Buenos Aires in an hour. I took a mirror out of my purse and fixed my hair. Adelaide always paid attention to how I looked, and I didn't want to disappoint her. Although the last time we'd spoken on the phone a month ago, my daughter had seemed distracted. She briefly wished me a happy birthday, told me she had a lot of work to do, and quickly said goodbye. Fabricio hadn't called at all in 2 months. He responded to my messages with one-word answers. Everything's fine. Things are good. I'll meet you when you get here. I wanted to believe it was just work fatigue. But deep down I felt that something had changed in our relationship. The train began to slow down and the outskirts of Buenos Aires appeared. I grabbed my suitcase and prepared to meet my children, hoping that these 5 days would help us become close again. The train arrived at the Constitution station right on schedule, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the exit, feeling my heart beat faster with anticipation of seeing my children. Buenos Aires greeted me with the usual hustle and bustle. The honking of cars, the shouting of vendors, the multi-voiced hum of the crowd. The air was warm and humid, smelling of exhaust fumes and fried meat from the street stalls. I got into a cab and gave Adelaide's address in Palermo. The driver, a middle-aged man with a gray mustache, was chatty and spent the whole ride talking about the traffic in the city and how expensive life was getting. I listened to him half-heartedly, looking out the window at the familiar streets of the capital. How much everything had changed over the years. There were new buildings, cafes, stores. The city was growing and developing, and I remained in my quiet provincial world. Adelaide's apartment was in a modern building on one of Palermo's quiet streets. Rodrigo had chosen the apartment very carefully. The neighborhood was considered prestigious and safe, with parks, good restaurants, and boutiques nearby. A seventh-floor apartment with panoramic windows and a spacious terrace cost a lot of money. But my husband spared no expense for the children. I took the elevator and rang the doorbell. There was silence for a few seconds. Then I heard footsteps. Adelaide opened the door and I shuddered. Her daughter looked very different from the last time I remembered her. Her hair was now a light shade with dark roots. Her face was brightly colored with makeup, and she was dressed in tight jeans and a short top that looked more appropriate for a party than for a meeting with her mother. "Mom, hi," Adelaide said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. "Come on in. Don't just stand in the hallway." I entered the apartment and looked around. The interior was modern white walls, black furniture, large abstract paintings. Everything looked expensive but somehow cold. There were fashion magazines, empty glasses, and an ashtray with cigarette butts on the coffee table. There was a huge plasma screen in the corner, and the screen flashed silently with images of some TV series. "It's a nice apartment," I said, putting my suitcase against the wall. "Yeah, it's not bad," my daughter said absent-mindedly, pulling her cell phone out of her pocket. Something flashed on the screen, and Adelaide immediately started typing a message. "Mom, make yourself comfortable. Would you like some coffee? We only have instant, though." I was surprised by that offer. Before, Adelaide had always greeted me with enthusiasm, sitting me in a chair, asking me about the road, about home, about my health. Now it was as if she was doing some unpleasant duty. "Thank you, I'll have some water," I said. My daughter nodded without taking her eyes off the phone and went into the kitchen. I sat down on the couch and tried to find a comfortable position on it. The furniture was not only beautiful, but also uncomfortable, too low and stiff. The sound of the refrigerator opening and the clinking of dishes came from the kitchen. "Adelaide, how are things going at work?" I asked when my daughter returned with a glass of water. "Fine," she answered briefly, staring at her phone again. "Lots of projects, constant deadlines. You know, Mom, I have plans for tonight. I'm meeting with my colleagues to discuss the new advertising campaign." I felt a pang of disappointment. Couldn't my daughter put off her business for at least the first day of my arrival? "Why don't I come with you? Or could we have dinner together before you meet?" Adelaide raised her eyes from the screen and looked at me with mild irritation. "Mom, this is a work meeting. It's to discuss things you're not interested in. Marketing strategies, target audiences, advertising budgets." That's when Gaspar came out of the bedroom. I'd only seen him a couple of times, a tall, thin man in his 30s with a neat beard and attentive gray eyes. He worked for an insurance company and seemed like a serious, reasonable man. Rodrigo regarded him with approval, saying he had a head on his shoulders. "Good afternoon, Señora Esther," Gaspar said politely, extending his hand. "How was your journey? Did the train arrive on time?" "Thank you. It went well," I replied, shaking his hand. "How are you doing, Gaspar?" "I'm working, I'm trying," he smiled, but it was a strained smile. "It's the busy season. A lot of clients want to get insurance before their vacations." Gaspar said the right things, but I felt he was keeping his distance from me. He used to be more open, willing to talk about his work, interested in my affairs. Now it's like he's doing the protocol of politeness. "Adelaide says she has a business meeting tonight," I said. "How are you spending your evening?" "I have business too," Gaspar answered quickly. "I need to go through the documents to prepare for tomorrow's negotiations." Adelaide, meanwhile, kept texting on the phone, laughing quietly at the messages from time to time. I sat on the uncomfortable couch and felt completely superfluous in this apartment my late husband had paid for. Can't we at least talk a little? I asked my daughter. I so rarely see you. I want to know how you live. Adelaide raised her head and looked at me with poorly concealed impatience. Hey, Mom, what is there to tell? I live like everyone else. I work, go out with friends, go to the gym. Just the life of a young man in a big city. How's your boss? Last time you complained that she was too demanding. It's all right, dismissed the daughter. We found a common language. The conversation didn't go well. Every question I asked was met with a short, reluctant answer. Adelaide was obviously in a hurry, and Gaspar stood by her side, silent, occasionally glancing at his watch. Finally, her daughter put the phone away and got up from the couch. Mom, I have to get ready. The meeting's at 7, and it's 6:30. You can stay in the guest room. Everything's ready. There's food in the fridge, so you can make something. I got up too, feeling bitterly disappointed. Was this really all my daughter could offer me after 4 months apart? Adelaide, I came especially for your birthday. Why don't you reschedule? My daughter stopped on the threshold of the bedroom and turned to me. Irritation flashed in her eyes. Mom, my birthday is tomorrow. I have important things to do today. I can't leave work because of family visits. Those words hurt me. So my coming to her is just a family visit that interferes with important business? Okay, I said quietly. I understand. Adelaide disappeared into the bedroom and Gaspar shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. Senora Esther, don't take offense to Adelaide, he said in a low voice. She's going through a difficult time at work. A new project, a lot of responsibility. I nodded, though I wasn't convinced by Gaspar's explanation. It seemed to me that it wasn't just the work, but that my daughter was simply estranged from her family. Half an hour later, Adelaide emerged from the bedroom, dressed in an elegant black dress and high heels. She looked very pretty and grown up, but completely alien. Mom, I'm going out. I'll be back late. Don't wait up. Tomorrow, we will definitely spend time together. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek and headed for the exit. Gaspar left too, saying he had to go to the office. I was alone in a strange apartment. There was food in the refrigerator, a few ready-made salads from the supermarket, cheese, sausage, fruit. I made myself a sandwich and sat by the big window overlooking the park. Downstairs, people with children were walking, dogs were running, and couples were sitting on benches. Life was going on, and I felt completely disconnected from it. At 8 in the evening, I called Fabricio to make an appointment. His son didn't answer right away. His voice was tired. Mom, hi. Are you in town already? Yes, I arrived this afternoon. How are you, son? I'm okay. I've been working a lot. I'm tired. Hey, why don't we meet at the restaurant? I don't have time to go home. I wanted to see how Fabricio lived, to get to know his life, but I didn't insist. Sure, where shall we meet? There's a nice place in Recoleta, not far from my house. It's called Don Carlos. Can you be there at 10:30? I wrote down the address and called a cab. Don Carlos turned out to be a middle-class restaurant with traditional Argentine cuisine. A small room, wooden tables, pictures of famous tango dancers on the walls. I arrived on time and booked a table for two. Fabricio was 20 minutes late. When he finally arrived, I hardly recognized my son. He had lost weight, his face was gaunt, and there were dark circles under his eyes. His suit was baggy and his tie was sloppily tied. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, sitting down at the table. The client delayed, could not decide on the terms of the loan. You look tired, son. Maybe you've been working too hard. Fabricio shrugged and picked up the menu. I work all right. It's just that it's the hot season. Everyone wants to take out loans for vacations and cars. The bank sets high plans, so I have to work hard. The waiter brought our order. I took a light salad. Fabricio ordered steak with potatoes. But my son almost did not touch the food, only drank red wine and absent-mindedly moved pieces of meat on the plate. How is your personal life? I asked. Are you seeing anyone? I don't have time for a personal life, Fabricio replied briefly. Work, work, work. I tried to ask him about his plans, his interests, what he does in his free time, but all his answers were one-worded and reluctant. I had the impression that my son was talking to me out of politeness, but in reality, he wanted to end the meeting as soon as possible. Fabricio, why don't you tell me what's bothering you? I finally asked you directly. You seem distant, withdrawn. My son raised his eyes and looked at me with surprise. Mom, it's okay. I'm just tired after work. You don't have to make a big deal out of everything. But you used to be more open. We could talk about things for hours. I used to be a student and now I'm a working adult. I have different concerns, a different rhythm of life. At 11:30, Fabricio looked at his watch and said it was time for him to leave. I'm going out with my friends. I promised a long time ago. Mom, I'll see you tomorrow at Adelaide's birthday party, right? I nodded, though I felt a twinge of resentment inside. So seeing his friends was more important than talking to his mother, whom he hadn't seen in a long time. My son paid quickly and kissed me goodbye. Good night, Mom. I'll see you tomorrow. I was alone in the restaurant, finishing my tea and trying to understand what had happened to my children. Why had they become so cold and distant? Had their father's death changed them so much? Or was it something else? When I got back to Adelaide's apartment, I lay in the guest room on an unfamiliar bed and couldn't sleep for a long time. My mind was reeling with the fragments of today's conversations, the disgruntled faces of the children, their indifferent voices. The first day of the meeting with the children turned out to be quite different from what I had imagined. In the morning, I woke up to the sound of the television in the living room. Adelaide was up and making breakfast, humming something to herself. When I came out of the guest room, my daughter turned around and smiled at me. The first time her smile seemed genuine since I'd been here. Good morning, Mom. Happy birthday to me, she laughed, setting a plate of toast on the table. 27 years, can you believe it? Congratulations, dear, I said, hugging my daughter. I wish you happiness, health, and all the blessings. We had breakfast together, and Adelaide seemed more relaxed than yesterday. She talked about her plans for the day. She had to go to the beauty parlor in the morning, pick up a cake from the cake shop in the afternoon, and have a small party at home in the evening. Mom, you're coming to the party, aren't you? My daughter asked, spreading jam on the toast. My friends from work will be there, some of Gaspar's friends, and Fabricio has promised to come. Of course I'll be there, I replied. What should I wear? I don't want to look out of place among your friends. Adelaide looked me over with an appraising gaze. You have that black dress you wore at your neighbor's wedding, don't you? It would be perfect. Maybe you should wear heels instead of flat-soled shoes. I nodded, though I was a little surprised at the tone. Adelaide had never commented on my clothes before. In the afternoon, my daughter left on her own, and I was left alone in the apartment. I walked around Palermo, went to a few stores, bought Adelaide an expensive perfume that she had once mentioned in a conversation. By evening, I returned home and began to get ready for the party. The black dress really looked appropriate, austere, elegant, no frills. I wore the pearl earrings Rodrigo had given me for my 20th wedding anniversary and the low-heeled shoes. The mirror reflected a woman of 54 who was trying to look dignified for her daughter's party. Adelaide returned at 7:30 with a huge cake and bags from the grocery store. Her hair was arranged in a fashionable style, her makeup professionally done. She looked very impressive in a bright red dress. Mom, help me set everything up, her daughter asked, taking the cake off the box. The guests would be here at 8. We set the table together, arranging the hors d'oeuvres, chilling the wine. Adelaide was in high spirits, joking and laughing, and I felt the intimacy that had been missing the day before. The first to arrive were Adelaide's colleagues, two girls about her age in brightly colored dresses and with impeccable makeup. Valeria worked as an art director at the same cosmetics company, and Lorena was a sales manager in a neighboring department. Both looked very modern and confident. Mom, meet Valeria and Lorena, my friends from work. Adelaide introduced them. Girls, this is my mom, Esther. The girls greeted me politely, but I immediately felt them assessing me with their eyes. Valerie, a tall blonde with sharp features, was especially scrutinizing my dress and hair. Soon the other guests arrived. A few more young men, Gaspar's colleagues from the insurance company, Adelaide's university classmates. The apartment was filled with loud laughter, music, and clinking glasses. Everyone was about the same age, all talking about things I was unfamiliar with: new restaurants, fashion designers, popular TV series. I sat in the corner of the couch with a glass of wine and tried to take part in the conversations, but I felt like a complete stranger in this company. The young men were polite to me, but communicated among themselves as if I were invisible. Their jokes, their innuendos, their discussions of common acquaintances all passed me by. At 9 o'clock, Fabricio came in. He looked as tired as yesterday, but he tried to maintain a festive mood. He congratulated his sister, gave her an expensive bracelet, drank several glasses of wine in a row. "How are things at work, Fabricio?" Valeria asked him, sitting down next to him. "I heard that banks are making good money on loans." "Yes, not bad," my son answered, but there was no enthusiasm in his voice. "People take loans for everything: cars, vacations, repairs. The main thing is to convince them that they can pay it back." "Aren't you afraid that there will be a crisis?" One of Gaspar's friends joined the conversation. "They say the economy is unstable." Fabricio shrugged his shoulders and finished his wine. "Crisis or no crisis, people still need money. And bankers will always find a way to make money." I didn't like the cynicism in my son's voice. He used to talk about his work with interest, proud of helping people solve financial problems. Now he treated clients as a source of income. By 10 p.m., all the guests had had a lot to drink. The music was louder, the conversations more relaxed. Adelaide was the center of attention, accepting congratulations, posing for pictures. She had drunk quite a bit of wine and was more talkative than usual. "You know," she said, turning to her friends, "sometimes it seems to me that I live in two different worlds. Here in Buenos Aires, I am a modern, independent woman. But when I come to my mother in the province, I immediately turn into a little girl." Valeria looked at me with interest, then at Adelaide. "Does your mother often come to visit?" "Rarely, thank God," laughed her daughter. "She lives in her own little world, where everyone knows everyone else and nothing changes for years." I felt my heart squeeze painfully. Did Adelaide really think that way about our town, about my life? "What does your mother do?" Valeria continued to ask. "She owns a textile factory," Adelaide answered, taking another sip of wine. "Dad founded it, and now Mom pretends to be a businesswoman. But in reality, the manager runs the place." My daughter's words cut me like a knife. I did entrust the day-to-day running of the factory to an experienced manager, but I made all the important decisions myself. Why would Adelaide humiliate me in front of her friends like that? "At least you have financial support," Lorena said. "It's nice when parents can help." Adelaide grimaced. "Yes, they could help, but they were always interfering with their advice." "Adelaide, don't drink so much." "Adelaide, find a good husband." "Adelaide, when I have grandchildren." Provincial mentality, what can I take from it? I sat and listened to my daughter mock my words and my concerns. Did she perceive my attempts to give her advice as intrusive? "Do you too, Fabricio, think that parents give too much advice?" One of the guests addressed my son. Fabricio grinned drunkenly. "Our mom is kind, but, how should I put it? A little out of touch. She thinks that life in the capital is the same as in the provinces, that you can go to the boss and talk to him in a human way, that all problems are solved with a kind word." "Well, yes," Adelaide said. "I remember how she advised me to make friends with my colleagues, invite them to visit, bake pies for them. Can you imagine? In the 21st century, baking pies for coworkers." The whole company laughed out loud. I felt my cheeks burning with shame and resentment. So they saw my sincere attempts to help the children with advice as comical naivety? Valeria looked at me carefully, then leaned toward Adelaide. "Can I ask you an indiscreet question? Does she always dress like that?" Adelaide followed her friend's gaze and looked at me. Something unpleasant flashed in her eyes. "Oh God, yes. Mom, why can't you dress more modern? Look at you. You look like my maid." There was a momentary silence. All the guests turned to me, then to Adelaide. Some coughed awkwardly, others pretended not to hear. Gaspar tried to turn the conversation to another topic, but it was too late. I rose slowly from the couch, set the unfinished glass on the table, and looked at my daughter. Adelaide realized that she had said something terrible and tried to correct the situation. "Mom, it's not what I meant to say, just..." But I wasn't listening. Silently, I went to the guest room, took my suitcase out of the closet, and started putting things away. My hands trembled with humiliation and pain. Maid. My own daughter compared me to a maid in front of her friends. Adelaide appeared in the doorway. Mother, where are you going? I didn't mean it. I've just had a few drinks. I closed my suitcase and turned to her. Adelaide, you said exactly what you thought. Thank you for your honesty. No, I didn't. I was just, you know what it's like in company, all joking and laughing. You don't joke about your mother, I said quietly. My daughter tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. Mom, don't make a scene. The guests will think, let them think what they want. I don't want to spoil your party with my provincial look. I took my suitcase and went into the living room. All the guests were quiet and looked at me with curiosity and embarrassment. Fabrizio was sitting in a chair with a grim face. He must have realized what had happened. Have a good evening, I said, heading for the exit. Mom, stop! Adelaide shouted. Don't go, we'll discuss everything. But I had already opened the door and stepped out into the hallway. The last thing I heard was Valeria's voice. Adelaide, you've gone too far. The elevator descended slowly and I stood looking at my reflection in the mirrored wall. Do I really look like a maid? A simple black dress, modest hair, minimal makeup? Yes, I didn't follow fashion, didn't spend a fortune on designer clothes. But was that a reason for such humiliation? On the street, I hailed a cab and asked him to take me to the nearest good hotel. The driver suggested the Grand Splendor in the center of town. The drive took half an hour, and the whole time I was trying to understand what had happened to my children. When had they become so cruel and indifferent? Why had my care and love turned into an object of ridicule for them? The Grand Splendor Hotel was truly luxurious. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, gilded furniture. I checked into a room on the 5th floor overlooking the avenue. The receptionist, an elegant middle-aged woman, was very polite and alert. Alone in the spacious room, I sat down in a chair by the window and tried to gather my thoughts. Outside the window, the lights of Buenos Aires at night were shining. Cars were driving along the streets, store windows were burning. Life went on and I felt old, unwanted, rejected by my own children. The phone was silent. Neither Adelaide nor Fabrizio called, not to ask where I was or how I'd gotten there. Perhaps they were even relieved when I left. Now they could have fun without a provincial mother to spoil their mood. I turned on the TV, but I couldn't concentrate on the programs. I could hear Adelaide's words, the laughter of her friends, the indifferent look on Fabrizio's face. Had I become a burden to them? A relic of the past that I wanted to get rid of as soon as possible? Around midnight, I showered and went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I thought about Rodrigo, how he loved the children, how he spoiled them, how he wanted to give them the best. What would he say if he heard Adelaide's words today? How would he react to Fabrizio's cynicism? Could it be that my husband has shielded the children too much from hardship, and now they don't know how to appreciate what they have? Or is the problem in me? Have I really become a boring provincial woman who doesn't understand modern life? But even if this is the case, does it justify such humiliation? Is it possible to talk like this about a mother who gave you life, raised you, loved you, provided you with everything you needed? In the morning, I woke up with a heavy head and a bitter taste in my mouth. The sun was shining through the dense curtains of the hotel, illuminating the unfamiliar surroundings of the luxurious room. For a few seconds, I didn't realize where I was, and then I remembered everything the night before, Adelaide's words, my leaving the party. I sat on the edge of the bed and picked up my phone. 5 missed calls from my daughter and 3 texts. The first was sent at 1 o'clock in the morning. Mom, I'm sorry, I meant to say the wrong thing. The second at 3 in the morning. Please call me, where are you? The third at 7 a.m. Mom, I'm worried, answer me. I put the phone away without answering. I needed time to sort out my feelings and figure out what to do next. I ordered room service breakfast, coffee, croissants, fresh fruit. The food was excellent, but I ate without appetite, thinking about what had happened. Around 10 in the morning, the phone rang. It was Fabrizio. Mom, where are you? Adelaide is frantic, looking for you all over the city. I'm at the hotel, I answered briefly. What hotel? Mom, why are you being such a baby? You had a fight and ran away. Adelaide apologized. She just drank too much. I was struck by my son's tone, condescending, patronizing, as if he were talking to a cranky teenager. Fabrizio, you heard what your sister said, and not just yesterday. So what? Young people always make fun of the older generation. It's normal. Teasing? I felt a wave of rage rising inside me. I was compared to a maid in front of strangers, and you call that teasing. Fabrizio sighed. Mom, don't make a big deal out of it. Come over and we'll discuss it calmly. No, I said firmly. I need time to think. My son said something else, but I didn't listen and disconnected the call. I didn't want to hear any more of their excuses and attempts to reduce it to a trivial quarrel. I showered, got dressed, and left the hotel. It was sunny and warm outside. People were going about their business, and life was going on as usual. I was the only one who had everything turned upside down inside of me, and I didn't know what to do with this pain and frustration. Walking through the city center, I involuntarily recalled the years when the children were small. Adelaide, with pigtails and in her school uniform, who would run towards me and tell me about the day gone by. Fabrizio, the serious boy who could sit for hours with his constructor and then proudly show off his constructions. Where did those kids go? When did they turn into these cynical, indifferent adults? Could the problem really be that Rodrigo spoiled them too much? The trust fund, the apartments, the constant financial support. All this made the children consumers, not creators. They were used to receiving without giving anything in return, not even simple respect for their parents. Suddenly, a thought arose in my head, which at first seemed absurd, and then began to take clear shape. What if we deprived them of this easy life? What if we made them realize the value of money and respect? I stopped in the middle of the street, ignoring passers-by. The children's apartments are legally mine. Rodrigo put them in his name, and when he died, I inherited them. The trust fund is also under my control. I can freeze the payments at any time. The children don't know about this. They believe the money is theirs by right. The more I thought about it, the clearer my decision became. It's time to show Adelaide and Fabrizio that the easy life doesn't come for nothing. That respect for parents is not an archaic tradition, but the foundation of human relationships. I pulled out my phone and found Emilio Castaneda's number in my contacts. Dr. Castaneda had been the family lawyer for more than 15 years, and it was he who had helped Rodrigo draw up all the documents related to the trust and estate. A man of about 48, serious and punctual, he always gave the impression of a completely reliable professional. Dr. Castaneda, this is Esther Valenzuela. Is it possible to meet today? I have an urgent matter. Of course, Mrs. Esther. I can see you at 3 o'clock in the afternoon if that's okay with you. Great. I'll be at your office at 3 o'clock sharp. The meeting was 4 hours away. I went to the cafe, ordered a coffee, and tried to think about my decision. It was a big step to take away my children's apartments and income. But did they deserve more after yesterday's humiliation? I remembered the faces of Adelaide's friends, their condescending smiles when my daughter had talked about my provincialism. I remembered Fabrizio's indifference, his unwillingness to spend time with my mother. All those months after Rodrigo's death, I thought the children were bereaved and had become aloof. In reality, they'd just grown up selfish, taking their parents' concern for granted. At 3:30, I was already outside the office building where Dr. Castaneda worked. A modern business center in the business district of the city, marble floors, glass elevators, strict security guards. The lawyer's office was on the 12th floor, with windows overlooking the main street of the city. Emilio Castaneda met me as politely and alertly as always. He was a short, stout man with graying temples and attentive brown eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. His office was furnished with expensive furniture, volumes of legal literature on the shelves, diplomas and awards hanging on the walls. Senora Esther, how are you? It's been a long time, he said, offering me a chair across from his desk. What can I do for you? Dr. Castaneda, I need your help with a very delicate matter. It concerns my children's apartments and trust fund. The lawyer took a folder of documents out of his desk drawer and looked at me carefully. I'm listening to you. I took a deep breath and outlined my decision. I want to sell Adelaide and Fabrizio's apartments and freeze the trust fund payments until further notice. Dr. Castaneda frowned and took off his glasses to wipe the pains. It was his usual gesture when contemplating a complex situation. Senora Esther, this is a very serious decision. May I know the reasons? I told him about last night, about Adelaide's words, about the children's behavior in recent months. The lawyer listened in silence, nodding occasionally. I understand how you feel, he said when I had finished. But I must warn you of the possible consequences. Your children are used to a certain standard of living. The abrupt withdrawal of financial support could cause them to react very negatively. Dr. Castaneda, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I want them to understand that money doesn't come out of thin air and that respect for parents is not dependent on financial status. The lawyer's been through the paperwork. From a legal point of view, there are no obstacles. The apartments are indeed registered in your name. The trust fund is also under your control. But I advise you to think carefully. Maybe you should talk to your children first, explain your feelings to them. I've already tried talking to them. They can't hear me. They think I'm just a hurt old lady who doesn't understand modern life. Dr. Castaneda shook his head. Senora Esther, have you considered the possibility that the children might break off their relationship with you altogether? Sometimes in such situations, financial conflicts lead to a complete severing of family ties. That question made me think. Really? Am I prepared for the possibility that Adelaide and Fabricio might stop communicating with me altogether? Dr. Castaneda, do we have a normal relationship now? They call once a month, they only come to visit on major holidays, and then they look like they're doing a heavy duty. If I'm only a source of money for them, then I'd better let that source dry up. The lawyer was silent for a few minutes, leafing through documents and writing something down. All right, he said at last. If you are determined, I will fulfill your assignment. But let's proceed in stages. First, freeze the payments from the trust fund. It can be done quickly, literally in one day. And we'll wait a few days to sell the apartments. Maybe the kids will realize the gravity of the situation and want to make things right. I like this approach. First a warning and then already drastic measures. I agree. When can we freeze the fund? Tomorrow morning, I'll prepare all the documents, and after lunch, we'll submit them to the bank. As of Monday, the payments will stop. What about the apartments? First, I'll prepare the sale documents, but I won't submit them to the registry. If the situation doesn't change in a week, then we'll start the sale process. The apartments in Palermo and Recoleta are liquid. Buyers will be found quickly. We discussed the details of the procedure. Dr. Castaneda explained that the trust fund freeze is a temporary measure that can be lifted at any time, but the sale of the apartments is irreversible. Senora Esther, what will you tell the children when they find out the payments have stopped? I'll tell them the truth, that only those who value family and respect their parents get the money. And if they apologize and ask for forgiveness? I've been thinking, what if Adelaide and Fabricio realize their mistake and apologize sincerely? If the apology is sincere and not formal, then I will consider reinstating the payments. But the apartments? No, they'll have to earn the apartments all over again. Dr. Castaneda nodded and began filling out the necessary paperwork. I signed the papers, feeling a strange mixture of determination and anxiety. On the one hand, I felt like I was doing the right thing. It was time for the kids to learn the value of money and the importance of family relationships. On the other hand, in the back of my mind, I felt fear. What if I was losing them forever? One last question, said the lawyer, putting the documents in a folder. And the money from the sale of apartments, what will you do? I hadn't thought about it. The apartments were quite expensive, about $400,000 each. I don't know yet. Maybe I'll deposit it, or maybe I'll spend it on charity. My advice is don't make any hasty decisions. Let's see how the kids react to the freeze first. We agreed to meet at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon to file the paperwork with the bank. Dr. Castaneda once again warned me of the seriousness of my decision and asked me to think it over well before tomorrow. As I left the office, I felt a strange sense of relief. I had finally stopped being a passive victim of childish selfishness and taken concrete action. Let Adelaide and Fabricio realize that a mother's love is not infinite and money does not appear by itself. In the evening, I had dinner at the hotel restaurant and thought about tomorrow. My phone was still off. I didn't want to hear any more attempts by the children to reduce it to a trivial quarrel. Let me do what I wanted to do first, and then we'd see how they reacted. The next day, at 2 o'clock sharp, I was in Dr. Castaneda's office. He had prepared all the necessary paperwork to freeze the trust fund. We drove to the bank where this fund was maintained. The bank manager, an elegant woman in her 40s, scrutinized our documents. She knew of the existence of the fund because the bank regularly transferred money to the children. Senora Valenzuela, may I ask why the fund was frozen? She asked. Family reasons, I answered briefly. The woman nodded and began to draw up the necessary paperwork. An hour later, everything was ready. The payments to Adelaide and Fabricia would stop on Monday. When will the children find out? I asked the manager. Usually we transfer the money on the 15th of each month. If there is no transfer on the 15th, they will contact us for clarification. Then we will inform them about the freezing of the fund on your order. So, I have a few more days before the kids find out about my decision. Maybe in that time they will call and try to sincerely apologize on their own. Back at the hotel, I turned on my phone. 8 missed calls from Adelaide, 3 from Fabricio, a slew of messages. I looked through them but found nothing new, the same formal apologies and requests to come back. Saturday morning, the phone rang. It was Celeste. Esther, where are you? I called your house. Carmen said you were still in Buenos Aires. How are the kids? I told my friend what happened. Celeste was silent for a long time, and then she sighed heavily. Esther, I know how much it hurts. But don't you think you're punishing the children too harshly? Do you think they're right? No, of course not. But young people sometimes say stupid things, especially when they've been drinking. Maybe you should have just had a serious talk with them. Celeste, I've tried talking to them. They can't hear me. They think I'm an old fool who doesn't understand modern life. My friend sighed. All right, well, what are you going to do next? I'll see how they react when they find out about the money freeze. If they repent sincerely, maybe I'll forgive them. If not, I'll sell the apartments. Esther, don't be so hard on yourself. You only have one child, you can't have another. After talking to my friend, I thought about my decision again. Maybe Celeste was right and I was being too harsh. But then I remembered Adelaide's face when she spoke of the maid, and my doubts disappeared. It was time for children to grow up and realize that every action had consequences. Monday began quietly and calmly. I had breakfast in my room, read the newspaper, walked around the center of Buenos Aires. The phone was silent. The kids must have been busy working and not yet aware that their financial well-being hung in the balance. I had a strange sense of the calm before the storm. Tuesday was quiet, too. I met with Dr. Castaneda to discuss the details of the condo sale. The lawyer had prepared all the necessary documents and warned that once we filed them, the process would be irreversible. Senora Esther, are you still confident in your decision? He asked, looking at me over his glasses. Yes, I answered firmly. If the children don't come to their senses after the freezing of the fund, then sell the apartments. Wednesday passed in reflection and walks. I went to museums, sat in cafes, watched people. In the back of my mind, I was hoping that the children would call and try to establish relations. But the phone remained stubbornly silent. On Thursday morning, exactly at 9 o'clock, the phone exploded with a call. It was Adelaide, and she sounded hysterical. Mom, what have you done? I just got a call from the bank. They say that the payments from the fund have been frozen on your orders. I took a deep breath. It's finally started. Good morning, Adelaide. Yes, it is. How is that so? You have no right. That money belongs to us. The money belongs to whoever manages it, and I'm the one who handles it. Mom, are you out of your mind? To deprive us of our livelihood because of some stupid quarrel? I was amazed that my daughter called her humiliating words a stupid quarrel. So she still doesn't understand the seriousness of her action. Adelaide, let's meet and talk. I'm at the Grand Splendor Hotel, room 512. Come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And Fabricio? He can come too if he wants. I hung up the phone and felt my heart pounding with excitement. Now everything would be decided. Either the children would realize their mistake and repent, or they would finally show their true colors. It was 4 hours before the meeting. I dressed in a strict dark blue suit, neatly combed my hair, and lightly tinted my makeup. I wanted to look dignified and not give the kids a reason to make fun of me again. At exactly 2 o'clock, there was a knock at the door of the room. I opened it, and Adelaide and Fabricio stood on the doorstep. My daughter was pale, her eyes red from crying. dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt. The son looked grim, his jaw clenched and his gaze full of cold anger. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. They entered the suite and stopped in the middle of the room without sitting down. Adelaide was the first to break the silence. "Mother, call off this madness at once. Call the bank and restore the payments." "Let's talk first," I replied calmly, sitting down in the chair. "Have a seat." "No, we're not sitting down," my daughter shrieked. "You're holding us hostage. This is blackmail." Fabrizio was still silent, but in his eyes I could see a fury I couldn't contain. "Adelaide, I want you to explain to me why you think it's okay to humiliate your own mother in front of strangers." The daughter snorted. "Oh, come on. I was just kidding. Everyone makes fun of their parents. It's normal." "It's normal to compare a mother to a maid?" "Well, I didn't mean it. Mom, you know what I'm like." Sometimes I say things without thinking. It struck me that my daughter still doesn't understand her guilt. For her, it was really just a bad joke, not a cruel humiliation. "How do you explain what you said about me being provincial? About me acting like a businesswoman? About my advice being provincial mentality?" Adelaide blinked confusedly. "Well, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just, well, you really don't understand how life works in a big city. And you, Fabricio?" I turned to my son. "What do you have to say for yourself?" The son finally spoke and his voice was ice cold. "Mom, stop making a spectacle of yourself. You took offense at the child's stupidity and decided to punish us. You're acting like a capricious child. Those words hurt me more than anything else. So to them, I'm really a capricious child, not a mother who has the right to respect." "Fabricio, do you remember how you said in the restaurant that I was out of touch and didn't understand modern life?" The son shrugged his shoulders. "So what? It's true. You live in the province. You don't know how business is organized in the capital, how careers are built. Your advice is simply irrelevant." "I see," I said quietly. "So, in your opinion, I'm a stupid provincial woman who doesn't understand modern life and gives irrelevant advice. And my feelings are not important at all." "Mom, why are you dramatizing everything?" Adelaide waved her hands. "We love you, it's just, well, yes, sometimes you say things that seem strange to us, but that doesn't mean we don't respect you." "Adelaide, respect comes from actions, not words, and your actions say otherwise." I got up and went to the window. Outside the window, the life of the big city was boiling. Cars were driving, people were hurrying, stores and offices were working. And here in the hotel room, the fate of our family was being decided. "Look," I said without turning around, "I'm willing to forgive you and reinstate your payments, but on one condition." "What was that?" Adelaide asked quickly. "You must understand that money doesn't come out of thin air, that you have to work and earn it on your own. That parental help is a gift, not an obligation." I turned to the children. Here's my proposal. I'll reinstate the fund, but I'll cut it in half. The rest of the money you have to earn on your own, and you must call me once a week and come to visit once a month." Fabricio snorted. "So you're putting conditions on us? Like little children?" "You're acting like little children yourselves. You're used to getting everything for free without giving anything in return." Adelaide was indignant. "Mom, we work. We have salaries." "Your salaries don't even cover half of your expenses. The rest you spend from the fund, expensive clothes, restaurants, entertainment. What's wrong with that?" my daughter shrieked. "Daddy wanted us to have a good life. Daddy wanted you to be happy. And happiness is not about money, but about family, about love, about respect for each other." Fabricio grinned contemptuously. "Mom, there's no need for moralizing. We are adults. We can decide for ourselves how to live our lives." "Then live on your own money," I replied calmly. There was a heavy pause. The children looked at each other, obviously not expecting such a turn. "All right," Adelaide said at last. "We agree to your terms. Reduce the payments by half. We'll call and come. Just give us the money back." But there was something in her tone that I didn't like. She was too quick to agree, too easy to accept. I felt that my daughter just wanted to get the money and then everything would go back to normal. "Adelaide, do you really realize how wrong you were? Or are you just saying what I want to hear?" Daughter stammered. "Well, I realize that I shouldn't have, say those things." "What things?" Well, about the maid. And the whole thing. I realized there's no remorse. Adelaide is just trying to say the right words to get the money. And you, Fabrizio? What do you say? My son looked at me with ill-concealed irritation. Okay, Mom. I apologize for calling your advice irrelevant. Now let's deal with the money. My son's tone finally convinced me that the kids hadn't changed. They still saw me as a source of funding, not a mother who deserved respect. You know what? I said. I've changed my mind. You've changed your mind? The kids asked in unison. The payments remain frozen, and I'm selling the apartments. Adelaide turned pale. You can't do that. We live in those apartments. I can. The apartments are in my name. But Daddy bought them for us. Daddy did a lot of things for you. What do you do for the family? Fabricio lost his temper. What do you want from us? We work. We live our lives. We don't ask for anything. I want respect. I want you to appreciate family. I want you to call me not out of politeness, but because you really care. Mom, we're calling, Adelaide protested. Once a month, for 5 minutes at a time, and you look like you're doing a heavy duty. There was a pause. The children were silent, not knowing what to say. Finally, Fabricio spoke, and there was a threatening note in his voice. Mom, if you sell the apartments, we'll sue you. Dad bought them for us. We have witnesses. Go ahead, I said calmly. Legally, the apartments belong to me. Moral obligations work both ways. Adelaide cried. Mommy, how can you do this? We're your children. Do you really want us to stay on the street? You won't stay on the street. You have jobs. You have salaries. Get a simpler apartment. Learn to live within your means. What means? The daughter screamed. Our salaries are enough only for food and utilities. How are we going to rent a place in a decent neighborhood? Not a decent neighborhood, but one you can afford. Dad didn't expect you to live on his money for the rest of your life. Fabricio got up and started pacing around the room. You know what, Mom? You're sick. You have some kind of psychological problem. Normal parents don't abuse their kids over nothing. Those words hurt me, but I tried to stay calm. Fabricio, humiliating your mother isn't nothing. And the fact that you don't understand that speaks to your problems, not mine. The son stopped and looked at me with outright anger. You know what I think? I think you're just jealous of our youth and success. You're sitting in your provincial hole, bored, so you decided to ruin our lives. I felt my heart clench with pain. Did my son really think that of me? Fabricio, I'm proud of your success, but success doesn't give you the right to forget your family. What family? He snorted. Do you want us to play the happy family, pretending to be interested in listening to your stories about the factory and the neighbors? Adelaide lifted her crying face. Mom, why do you make us say such things? We didn't mean to hurt you. But you do, I said quietly, constantly and methodically. My daughter wiped her tears and suddenly her face changed. The tears disappeared and a look of cold determination appeared. All right, Mom, if that's what you decide, then live with it. But know that if you sell our apartments and leave us without money, we're no longer your children. Adelaide, I screamed. No, I want you to know, my daughter shrieked. You think we're going to grovel and beg for forgiveness? You're wrong. We are young, healthy. We can live without your money. Fabricio stood next to his sister. Adelaide is right. If you want to play the cruel mother, go ahead. But without us. I looked at my children and didn't recognize them. They were strangers, cold and calculating, ready to break up with their mother over money. So money is more important to you than family? I asked. What's more important to you? Fabricio parried. You chose money as a tool of pressure. I chose justice. The son laughed contemptuously. Justice? You're just a crazy old woman who can't accept that the children have grown up and lived their own lives. These words sounded like a whiplash. Crazy old woman. That's what my own son, the man I gave birth to, raised, loved, called me. I slowly got up from my chair and walked over to the phone on my bedside table. Dialed Dr. Castaneda's number. Dr. Castaneda, this is Esther Valenzuela. File the paperwork for the condo sale, today. The children froze, unable to believe what they were hearing. Mom, you can't, Adelaide whispered. I hung up the phone and turned to them. I can, and I do. Now please leave my room. You're going to regret this, hissed Fabricio. We'll find a way to challenge your decision. You will. In the meantime, vacate the apartments. You have a month to do that. Adelaide rushed to me. Mom, how can you do this? I'm your daughter, your blood. My daughter died the night she called me maid, and you are strangers who want to live off my money. My daughter recoiled as if I'd hit her. All right, she shouted. Live alone, die alone. We're not your children anymore. They headed for the exit. At the door, Fabrizio turned around. You know what, Mother? Dad wouldn't have understood you. He loved us and wanted the best for us. And you're just an angry, jealous woman. The door slammed shut. I was alone in the room, which suddenly seemed huge and empty. I went to the window and looked out at the street where life was booming and I was dead and cold inside. Had I done the right thing? Was it really worth destroying my family out of pride? But then I remembered Fabrizio's words, crazy old woman, and realized that the family had already been destroyed. I just didn't want to see it. That evening, I packed my things and ordered a cab to the train station. The morning train was taking me home, to my provincial town, to my hole, as my son put it. Carmen was waiting for me there, the factory, old acquaintances. Not family, but at least not enemies. The train started right on schedule. I sat at the window and watched the lights of Buenos Aires float by. Somewhere out there were my children who no longer wanted to be my children. Somewhere there were their apartments that would go under the hammer tomorrow. Somewhere out there remained my old life, where I was a loving mother, not a crazy old woman. On the road, I hardly slept at all. I thought about the past, about the future, about whether I had done the right thing. By morning, I came to the conclusion that I had no other choice. The children had made their choice, and I had made mine. The train arrived in my hometown at 10 in the morning. Celeste met me on the platform. I had warned her last night about my return. She looked worried. Esther, how are you? Did the kids realize their mistake? I shook my head and told her about last night's meeting. Celeste listened silently, only occasionally shaking her head. Oh my God, she whispered when I was done. Did they really say that? They did, and worse. We drove home in Celeste's car. Familiar streets, familiar houses, familiar faces. My world, my whole, as Fabrizio said. But here no one called me a crazy old woman. Here I was, respected simply for being Esther Valenzuela. The house greeted me with quiet and order. Carmen cleaned everything, watered the flowers, even put fresh roses from the garden in vases. The simple housekeeper was more attentive than her own children. Senora Esther, how was your trip? Carmen asked as she helped me unpack my suitcase. It was fine, Carmen. Thanks for looking after the house. I didn't bother to tell her the details. What do you say to a simple woman when your children have disowned you? In the evening, Celeste and I sat on the terrace, drinking tea and watching the sunset. My friend tried to comfort me. Esther, maybe they'll come to their senses, realize they were wrong? I don't think so, I said. Too much pride, too little love. Don't you regret your decision? I wondered. Do I regret it? Does it hurt? Of course it hurts. But is it the right thing to do? Yes, it's right. No, Celeste. I'm not sorry. I gave them a chance and they didn't take it. My friend sighed. Well, if that's what you decide, what are you going to do now? I looked at the sunset sky, at my garden, at the familiar shape of the city. Live, I said simply. Just live.